So what I want to do here is go on to Reddit, find questions from people, and see if I can give advice both to them and to, the world at large. After all my years of experience, I found it really helpful as a new player and a new DM to be able to go onto these forums and put it out there. And sometimes you get haters. Sometimes people are mean. Welcome to the internet. Welcome to Reddit. But the people who wanted to help, I found it very helpful. So I think we're going to call this Tome of the DM, and I am just going to kind of flip through some Reddit pages and give my thoughts on them. I've picked some out, so I've set some up, but if you have something that you think is a good question and you want to put it in chat, you can. Or if you want to direct me to a Reddit post, feel free to do that as well. Okay, so our first post that we picked out comes from a friend of Jimbo. Love the name. How do I stop building glass cannons? Now, after I read through this post, I felt like maybe not glass cannon a problem with it, but so it says, hi Reddit, my favorite part in D&D is creating characters in combat. I feel you there, brother. However, I always end up with 0 HP mid-fight. So I'm just going to stop it right there and just say, don't worry too much about that. In D&D, in specifically 5e, the game is designed to put you on the ground. And then you're supposed to get back up. Going to 0 HP isn't the end of the world. Obviously, dying is different. But going to 0 HP, I just want to let you know, very normal. And so don't freak out about that. Currently, my main character is a Tabaxi Rogue 5 Arcane Trickster, Druid 3 Circle of the Moon. So a level 8 character, 5 levels of Rogue, 3 levels of Druid. Kind of a weird mashup there with the Arcane Trickster subclass and the Circle of the Moon subclass, but he addresses that immediately. Yes, I know it's incredibly suboptimal, but it's really fun to play and with tons of versatility out of combat, which I picked the classes for. The Arcane Trickster spells and the feat plus the Circle of the Moon's wild shape make me useful in any social interaction and environment. Also, it makes sense with my lore. Please do not berate me about them. Again, the internet can be mean. All that matters to me is that you're having fun playing it. And the way that you described it feels like you're having fun playing it. Yes, the power gamers in the comments are going to tell you about how those two don't really go together. But I think the underrated thing that's in there, if you really look at that build, and this is what I would say back to the power gamers, is he's got access to the wizard spell list and to the druid spell list. He's got access to divine and arcane magic. He's got expertise. He's got several skills. He's got a pool of hit points that he can reach into when he needs to with the Circle of the Moon. So even to the power gamers, I'd say this build, while suboptimal, plenty of things that it can do, and I don't think a bad build at all. He goes on to say, and again, this is the most important part, he's incredibly fun to play both in and out of combat. I always end up dealing great single target burst damage with Sneak Strike and Druid spells, but I always faint mid-fight. Again, the most important part is that it's fun for him to play. But yeah, with the rogue sneak attack damage, of course, you really do some work there, no doubt. I am unsure as to how to play this out. Since I'm playing him as a melee character, I always end up on the front line, which I do not have the HP, 45, or AC, 17, for. I would like to round out my character. a little bit more. The final paragraph says, is this a matter of gameplay style? I know I could use the rogue's disengage and bonus action more often, but how could I prevent more hits besides that? What gameplay mechanics could help me? What feats, spells, etc. Could help me out and reduce the damage, have more HP, higher AC, or in general faint less often. Magic items are not an option since that's up to the DM, but we have an artificer who's able to craft stuff for me as long as has anything metallic. Retroactively changing classes is also not an option, as I mentioned, but changing subclasses would work if I could convince my DM. Thanks beforehand. So the number one thing I would say, and I typed out this response already, just to have my thoughts already pre-typed out so I don't spend a lot of time typing on stream. So you are one level away from an ASI in Druid. And so if you take that ASI in Druid, you have a feat available to you almost immediately. The first thing that comes to mind, and it's said several times in this chat, is tough as a feat. It gives you 2 HP per level. And so as a level 9 character, it's 18 extra hit points that you get automatically, plus your hit die for that level, which I believe Druids are D8. So that's 26 hit points you add to your 47. You're adding a third of your hit points, more than that, to you in one level. So you'll go from 45 to 51, 71 hit points. That'll help you with fainting. And so a lot of people said that in there. That's certainly an option. I, of course, encourage him, if you're having fun with the variety it provides, it doesn't matter if it's suboptimal. Fun is what it's all about. The extra 18 HP will help your survivability. And yes, you should be using your cunning action more to get in and out. I can't overemphasize this enough with rogues. Most rogues don't use that properly. You can split up your movement speed, meaning you don't have to take all 30 feet of your movement at once. So at any given time, you should be 15 feet away from whoever you're attacking, and then move in, attack, take a disengage, and move back out. And you shouldn't take any strikes. That is one of the big things I see people forget to do as a rogue. You're so focused on getting the hit that you're not protecting yourself. So yes, using that cunning action, it is it is the feature for rogue. It is that, and sneak attack are the two things you build that character around. So using that in and out movement is very important. Other options you would have, I think, are probably not as good of options, but I'd be willing to listen to it. I think the next best option you would have is to take level 4, take the feat, and take Magic Initiate and Cleric. If you do that, you can take the Shield of Faith spell. And the Shield of Faith spell gives you +2 bonus to your AC, just flat. Now, you do have to concentrate on it, so it'll eat up your concentration. It also takes a bonus action, so if you're planning on turning into a wild shape, you can't do that and Shield of Faith on the same turn. But if you're able to take the Magic Initiate and take that feat, that's +2 to your AC. Now you're talking about an AC of 19, and you're getting to a level of AC that like heavy armor wearers are around. It should affect how often you get hit. However, you're at level 9 already. So those heavy armor wearers have probably found ways to boost their AC into the low 20s. And the monsters are going to reflect that. They're going to be able to hit ACs that are that high. So a 19 AC will protect you more. Will it protect you as much as the extra hit points? I don't know. It's hard to say. Third option that you can have is you can start exploring other classes. If you take 2 levels in Warlock, you can get Eldritch Invocations, and you can cast False Life on yourself every turn or whenever you want without expending a spell slot. That is 7 temporary HP that you get. So it's a way to buff your HP pool. 3-class multi-classes are tough, and I wouldn't normally suggest them. Plus, there's other ways that you can get access to that, but there's no other way that you can get access to it where you can cast it as often as you want. So False Life is an interesting spell. It helps, but the only way that you can get it where you can cast it as many times as you want without expending a spell slot is via the Warlock. So the most basic answer is to take tough. That plus your hit die will give you 20 something HP the next level and should really help your survivability. I don't know. Obviously, he didn't put his ability stats in there. If you can up your dexterity and up your armor class that way, that's something that I would consider as well, because you can do a half feat and get an ASI, and maybe put a point into dex and up that. So if you can team up the half feat with a point in dexterity and up your AC by 1 because you're upping your overall dexterity score, definitely a way to do it. Okay. New DM needing advice. Hey, so a bit of information off the start. I'm a new DM trying to run my first game, a one-shot / short campaign with some friends. With my friend group, there's only one experienced player, so the question is, any experienced DMs have advice on what you could give, what advice would you give to a new DM in my shoes? A bit of background on the story. It is a mystery dark fantasy where the big bad is banished, the god who is trying to regain power by controlling people through a cult of sorts. The campaign will use a lot of illusions and the don't believe everything you see plot, and having the players make tough moral decisions. If anyone has any questions that may help give more advice, feel free to ask. I think this is a pretty approachable question. I think it's one of those questions that you get a lot. I've got one experienced player at my table. Do you have any advice for somebody in my shoes? So I gave him just some general D&D DM advice, and we'll talk a little bit about the experienced player. First thing I'd say to any new DM, know that your plan is going to get ruined. You are going to obsess about it, love your plan, have a vision of how things are going to go, and they are going to find some door that you didn't expect them to find, or roll a 20 on some persuasion check or something to ruin your plan. Every DM will tell you this. And you have to then find ways to allow them the freedom to do that and then steer them back to whatever it is the ending of your story is that you have in your mind. So things just won't always go as you foresee. But if you stick with it, and this is what I say, stick with it, make decisions that are the most fun, and admit when you don't have the right answer. I think that's really important to say. It's okay to say, I'm not sure, let's look it up. It's okay to say, I'm going to make a ruling on this right now to help the game flow, and we'll look it up after the session or, this weekend or something like that. And we'll fix something if it needs to be fixed, but I'm just going to make a ruling on it right now. So we're not wasting a bunch of time at the table. All of that is okay. And if you act like you know everything and you don't, your experienced player is going to be like, what's this guy doing? And it can ruin the game. So I think a big thing to tell new DMs is it's okay to admit that you don't know the answer, you don't know the rule, you don't know what the exact numbers are. It's also okay to say, I'm just going to make a ruling for right now, and we'll go back and retcon it. For prep in general, I would say it's more important to know the setting and the people than it is to have the storyline planned out bullet point by bullet point. And so I generally think of my NPCs and locations in 3 tiers. One is NPCs and locations that they are 100% definitely going to interact with, and spend 5 minutes on each of those where you flesh out some of the details about those things. So if it's an NPC you're sure they're going to interact with, you want to make sure that you have a stat block for them in case even if you're not planning on them getting into combat. Are they charismatic? Do they have persuasion? Are they intimidating? It's, I think, important to go through and hash all that out beforehand. So if they do get in an argument with a player and you have to roll a persuasion check for your NPC, you have it there in front of you. So find out your details, build a stat block. I like to think about the three V's, but I've seen people say flaws, something else. There's three F's that people use when they're talking about it. When I talk about an NPC, and I say this for people who are building characters, I think of the three V's: voice, vice, and vibe. Voice is not just like the character voice that you do, though it can be, because that can inform you as to some of the traits of the character. But like voice, like what's his inner voice saying? What are they searching for? What do they want? What is their goal? What is their end game? Is it to rule the city or save all the people, or what's their voice? What's driving them? Vice is give them some sort of flaw. It's what makes characters memorable. It doesn't have to be something overwhelming. Like it doesn't have to be like, oh, he's missing a leg and he only moves 15 feet of movement speed because he's got a peg leg. It can be anything, and even something small. Like he always taps his cane on the ground, or she always has her nails done, or it can be anything, but give them some sort of little vice that is something that they focus on. And you can use that in the role play where, like, if it's she always has her nails done, you can have her miss a meeting or not be there to talk to the adventurers because she's out, doing something, getting her nails done, whatever. And so that vice, that thing that they always have to do, their problem, lets you kind of role play them a little bit more. And then vibe is, how do you feel when talking to somebody? And I think this is something that people feel in everyday interactions that they don't necessarily bring into role play all the time. So I would say to you, like, how you talk to somebody and it just feels like an old friend, but you don't know them. Or they feel very comforting and loving when you talk to them, even though you've only known each other for a little bit. Though that's what I mean when I say vibe. So, like, what's the feeling they have when they go into the room, when they start talking to the person? Voice, vice, vibe. That's generally how I like to think about it, to kind of flesh out a character. But I only do that for the characters I'm 100% sure that they're going to interact with. And then the same thing for a location. What's the vibe of the location? What's wrong with it? Is there a lot of crime there? Do they not like old people? Do they have a goblin problem? You know what I mean? Like, what is the problem in the location? And for the voice, that's better for obviously an NPC than it is for a town. But just make sure you have a kind of feel of the city and or dungeon or hills or whatever. If you're 100% that they're going to interact with it, those are the things that I think about in that tier. The next tier down is if they may interact with them. I'll just make sure I have a couple of details about what it is. If you have a name, you have a species, and then you have just a couple of details about it, it makes it easier for you to kind of ad-lib and create the rest of the character around what that is. And then things that are in the outer ring, things that they probably won't interact with, or if they do, it'll be like, oh, look, the town of Bardingale is on the map over there. What do we know about Bardingale? Just make sure you have one thing. What's the defining thing about that location or that person? And so in the example I wrote here, he's a pirate. That's it. And then from there, if I want to go talk to him. Okay, now they go talk to him. Now you have something to start from when you're creating that character as an ad-lib. Okay, he's a pirate. Does he have an accent? Is he a swordsman? Is he a cannoneer? Is he a captain? Is he, you know what I mean? Is this his home, or is he here just for a short amount of time? And if he's here for a short amount of time with his crew, where is the rest of his crew? Is he alone, or is he drinking with them? These, just because you said to yourself in prep, he's a pirate. Now you have all those things that can pop into your head as you're DMing when you didn't necessarily expect them to go talk to this person. You have a little bit of a thing. You also then have stat blocks that you can look up. You can look up a swashbuckler. You know what I mean? So if you know just one detail about this guy and all of a sudden they start a fight with the pirate, you can online or in your book look up a swashbuckler and just be like, okay, that's his stat block. Hopefully it's not too overwhelming for him, but they picked a fight with a rando, so what do you want me to tell you? And you get all that just from having one detail prepped about somebody who you didn't think that they were going to interact with. And same thing for the town, right? The town is haunted. Okay, well, we want to go there. All right, well, you go to the town and it is haunted, quote unquote. And so now you know that you're looking up undead and ghouls. You can have the inn be like quiet because not a lot of people come through the town. Turns out the mayor is actually a lich or undead or something like that. You know what I mean? Like all this stuff you have just from the town is haunted. And now you can go look up monster stat blocks. You can do whatever to ad lib. And so that's kind of that outer sphere. Things that you don't think people are going to interact with, but you have just one detail on. It allows you to kind of vamp on that. So that is the general advice I'd give to new DMs. Other tips that I have a name sheet. I think it's the most important thing for me, because when they're talking about somebody and you don't have it as a character that you have fleshed out already, nothing breaks the immersion more than them going, oh, what's your name? And you going, Steve. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing that breaks the immersion of the role play, the game, the feeling, the vibe more than you doing that. And I just can't say it enough. If every NPC you have is named Steve and Joe and you know, Ashley, you just, it doesn't have the same feel. So there's lots of ways to build a name sheet, but have just a name sheet of 20 names that you don't have characters for, but just make sure they are of varying sounding species. You know, some of the names sound elven, some of the names sound human, some of the names sound tiefling. Just make yourself a little list of names, and that way, if they run into it, you can be like, oh, the name is Velos. Okay, great. And then you can start to ramp. And it's a name that sounds like it fits the world and doesn't necessarily pull anybody out of the immersion. So I think having a name sheet is really helpful. I didn't put it in here, but one of the things I like to do is have a small encounter written. I normally actually have a couple of them because you don't use them all the time. But going a whole game without combat is tough. And so if you write just small encounters that are modular, that you can put anywhere into your story, so they relate to your story a little bit, but it's not overwhelmingly important. It's not something that's like part of the main plot line. I'll have just a couple of scenarios written. And what I mean by written is I know, okay, they're going to fight 6 goblins that are level 1. Here's what the goblins are doing. This is why somebody will get involved. This is why they'll get involved. And I can insert that into the story anywhere. So if they're getting off track or they're avoiding the combats that I had, you know, and this is all depending on how much combat your group likes. My groups generally like combat. I like to have these little, and written, I mean, it takes 5 seconds, right? You find the goblin stat block, you make sure the numbers match up with the group that you're DMing for, and you just insert it into the story. the inn you're staying at, all of a sudden there's a bunch of commotion downstairs and the goblins have ransacked it. And then when you put it in there, you can make it more important to the story. So yeah, the goblins got in, they started ransacking downstairs, you came down, you killed them all. But little did you know, they've got the crest of somebody who is your prime suspect for whatever your main storyline is. So were they coming there for you? Were they sent there to kill you? Or did they just happen to break into the inn and ransack it? It's very easy to ad-lib that sort of stuff, especially if you have 2 or 3 encounters built to go in. So that would be the last piece of advice that I would have. And then I think this is super important. I said this before. Most of all, and I say this to all DMs, you'll do great. It is a whole lot more intimidating to start DMing, to say that you're going to do it, than it is to actually DM. You're in your own head about it, and it's one of those things where if you haven't sat in the chair before, it's scarier than it actually is. So trust yourself, trust your instincts. You know what's fun. Just go have fun and make sure your table has fun. That's all that matters. Okay, what exactly constitutes metagaming? Extremely basic, I know. This is from Sharp Butterfly 3096. Extremely basic, I know, but I thought I had a bigger grasp on this concept. But after DMing my first longer form campaign, which lasted about 3.5 months, I have 4 players. I was that every now and then, while making a scene with one player, the other 3 were talking and doing during slightly longer scenes. I don't mind. After a while, I realized that they were kind of strategizing abilities for future fights. Now, it was never a long period of time this happened. It would catch my ear and I'd be like, whoa, wait, are you guys planning? As I thought I'd missed info I'd need as a DM, they'd reply saying, oh, we're not telling you, we're setting stuff up for future fights. I found myself confused and thinking like, wait, do they have a point? Do they think that if they tell me, I'll specifically find a way to nullify their plan with a boss finding out? I was confused on whether or not it's metagaming. For added context, it was stuff like the sorcerer got a spell and I didn't know about. Turns out I didn't know about it, and it was summon dragon. So I was caught off guard when they used the spell. And stuff like deciding for the magic user to use hold person while the fighter had action surge to really take advantage of it. These weren't strategized in character or even during a fight. It was the run up to the big bad evil guy. So metagaming, I do think, is a problem and something that you have to watch at the table. But as I said in my response here, I think this is fine. I mean, metagaming is important to watch. You don't want to let them run too far with it. But a group of adventurers sitting around a fire at night would be talking about, hey, I got this hold person spell now. And when you do it, somebody can't move. Oh, really? Well, then let me try to get as many attacks in as I can while the person can't move. Yeah, I mean, strategizing like that, things that they know that they have, I think any adventuring group would do that. How can we optimize us as a group? Yeah, I think that's fine. And especially, I have a new spell I just want to let you guys know about, XYZ. I think that's totally fine. I don't think that's metagaming at all. Now, when I would say metagaming is a problem is if they walk into the room with the BBEG and you start your initiative and 2 rounds into the fight, they take 20 minutes to discuss what they want their next action to be. Well, they don't have that time in the fight, right? Like, it's going like this. And though it's taking us 20 minutes to get through it, each turn is only 6 seconds long. So they don't have time to stop and strategize and talk about things that they would want to do to beat an ad or handle a situation. They have to just make that up as they go. And so that's the table talk, the metagaming that I would quell. I would let them talk real quick, maybe a sentence or two, because in a battle you could shout, hey, focus down the bad guy, or take out the ads. Like, you could yell that in 6 seconds. And so if they spend just a second or a minute or two talking to each other, being like, hey, do we want to take out the ads first? Yeah, let's do it. I'll generally let that go. But if they're spending, copious amounts of time going through strategy, all that kind of stuff, that's not something that you'd have the opportunity to do. I also would stop them if we're in a role-playing session and they're standing in front of somebody and they try to talk amongst themselves. That is generally the most common place where I stop metagaming. Is I will stop them and say, you are standing in front of the king. You cannot be talking about him like this. Do you have telepathy? Are you sending messages back and forth? And even if you are doing that, are you standing there silently, awkwardly while the king is watching you? You know what I mean? So those are the situations that I would stop metagaming. The situation described by the OP is not something that I think is metagaming, and I think is totally fine. Okay, next one. Too big of a group. What do I do? Hey, I'm with a group of 10 people, and I am the sole DM. Whew. Yeah, too big of a group is absolutely right. Lots of us want to do a campaign with different levels of involvement. 4 want to play every week, a few once or twice a month, and 2 want to join maybe every other month. I'm a new DM. I did 6 PCs for a one-shot, and it felt like a lot. But with experience, I feel like I will feel fine with a group of up to 6. More curious if anyone has ever done a campaign with players coming and going often, and advice on how to manage that. So I have actually done that before. The group ended up deciding that they didn't want to run it like this, but we did for a little bit. First thing I'd say, 10 people is way too many for a table in any scenario. Combats would be long. Role play would be hard. Decision making would drag. It would be a total disaster. I think 6 is too many. I would do up to 6 at a table, but you're better off if you can keep your number limited to like 4. I think that's kind of the ideal number for trying to make everything work. So way too many people for the table. So my first advice would be encourage somebody else to DM. I mean, the people that want to play every week, maybe one of them is passionate enough about it to DM. But if you've got 10 people and nobody else can DM, I think it's fair to encourage one of them to try to pick up a DM. And that way, whatever time interval you're comfortable with running, like if you want to play a weekly game, then you DM the weekly game. And if you want to play a bi-weekly game, then you DM the bi-weekly game. But I would try to separate the 2 groups. So what I had done, and this is the other solutions portion, is I kind of ran a red and a blue team. And the red team met weekly and the blue team came in every other week. And essentially what I did is I built the story so the 2 groups were moving towards the same goal, but doing separate tasks along the way. So you could kind of think about it as like 2 divisions of the same army, right? They are moving towards the same goal, but don't necessarily, why did I not spell separate right? Don't necessarily have the same tasks to complete on the lean up. And with that, you can kind of do a 1 session at the very end where you have everybody there and you can kind of make it the ending of it to bring the groups back together. But essentially, you're running 2 separate games on the same storyline. You could do a sign up where you just say, hey, we're running a game this week. We run a game every Thursday. Sign up if you want to come. And if you do that, I think it would be important to level everybody together. So whenever somebody shows up at the table, they're not way far off. But what if 6 people sign up and a 7th wants to come? Are you going to be able to say to them, I'm sorry, the table's full tonight? It's what you get if nobody else wants to DM. So it's a tough way to run it, but I wouldn't run it with more than 6 people. But if you do a sign up, you might have people more inclined to honor their commitment and make sure that they're there for the game, which also can be a problem when you have so many people, is that a bunch of people say they're coming and then don't show. It doesn't feel as big of a deal if you don't show up if there's 10 people there. If there's 4 people there and you don't show up, it feels like a huge deal. So if you do the sign up portion of it, I think it would put a little bit more weight in making sure people came. And then finally, you can always want to run a West Marches style of game. That is the type of game that Critical Role is running for this campaign. I'm not a huge fan of it, but essentially what it is you do the sign up thing, but you make sure that every game starts and ends in the same location, and that they are part of an army or a guild or whatever who goes out and does missions and then comes back to their spot. It's really hard to build a storyline around this to have like a main plot line and advance that plot line, but it's not impossible. It's just more difficult. And so if you play a West Marches type game, it's easy for a player to feel disconnected from the storyline. It's harder to build in meaningful things from the players or their backgrounds or what have you. And it more just feels like transactional. You know what I mean? Like I'm going out running a group, running a mission and then coming back. So you can run a West Marches game, but if you do that, the people who show up less often theoretically would fall behind in experience and level. And so then you would be dealing with a large level group at the table, which makes it harder on DMs. So those are my suggestions, but my real suggestion is cut it out. You know what I mean? If you want to run weekly games, run with the 4 people that want to run weekly, and tell the rest of them, hey, sorry, we don't have room at the table. We're going to play a weekly game. Maybe next time we run a campaign, we can get you together. Or say to them, you know, hey, if one of you wants to DM, you guys can start your own game because we want to run it weekly. Or vice versa, right? Tell the weekly people, hey, if you want to run a game, run it weekly, that's fine. But we are going to do a bi-weekly game. That is my main advice. Don't run it with 10 people. Make it smaller and make it easier to run. New DM for experienced players, balancing min-maxers. Super common problem. Hello, everyone. Long story short, I'm a brand spanking new DM with a relatively new player, 2 years of experience, but I'm building out a new campaign for my party and maybe worrying a bit for nothing. I've got one player who is a close friend. We've never played together, ironically, but known each other. But I've known he really enjoys maxing damage in combat and multi-classing to get those synergies. He's currently a sorcerer eyeballing a Sorlock build to machine gun Eldritch Blast. He has mentioned meta magic. So I'm assuming that's an idea with a quicken spell. Yeah, I mean, even that is only 2 Eldritch Blasts a turn, so I don't know that I would call it a machine gun Eldritch Blast, but I'd be interested to see what he's trying to build. I'm wondering, how do you guys deal with these situations? I've already talked to him and expressed my concern. He seems to think it's still pretty balanced. I'm not opposed to him maxing and having fun, but I don't want it to be at the cost of the rest of the party enjoying themselves, or just melting my encounters where I'm new and won't be able to rebalance it on the fly. Edit. Party comp will be a Rune Knight Fighter, Circle of the Land Druid, Armorer Artificer, Trickster Rogue, and then the Sorlock. Edit 2. You guys are fantastic. I'm blown away by all the advice in such a short time. Excuse me. Looking forward to reading more of these. Thank you again, everyone. Cheers. Kimball. And that's from Kimball the Dwarf. So I think this is a super common problem at tables. Everybody's there for a different reason. Very rarely do you get a group of all of the same type of player. So if you get all min-maxers at a table, that's having a group of all the same type of player. And then, it causes this imbalance at the table. But that's just D&D. Like every game I've played, you have different types of players at the table. So the first thing I'd say, just as like a CYA, is make sure that nothing that they're doing is banned. If he's going for a coffee lock where they're converting points, sorcery points into spell slots, and then warlock spell slots into sorcery points, and just doing that, they got rid of that in D&D 2024. It is something that GMs have banned at the table. It would be the first thing that I would make sure. Make sure that nothing that they're doing has been banned by a lot of people. But it sounds like, based on what the OP said, that they're not doing anything bannable. Eldritch Blast is one of the best cantrips in the game. He's trying to find a way to use it multiple times a turn. And great. I mean, the rules will protect you from that being too powerful. I don't think he'll melt your encounters with something like that. It may more just be like he's got an everlasting battery because Eldritch Blast is a cantrip, so you can cast it as often as you want. It's one of the best cantrips in the game. It's what warlocks are built around. But if he multi-classes into sorcerer, he's going to nerf his own build that way. So if he finds some cool way to use it where he can turn it into an Eldritch Blast machine gun, particularly I'm thinking that he's going to use the meta magic feat with the quicken spell, or the twin spell maybe. But there are limits to it. One, his Eldritch Blast won't be as powerful because he won't be able to take Eldritch invocations that a higher level warlock could to do more damage with it or push people back or whatever. So he's going to nerf himself a little bit in that way, but he can probably be selective on the Eldritch invocations that he takes and make it powerful. And then he's going to nerf himself from a sorcerer standpoint, as if he's taking levels in warlock, he won't get as many sorcery points, and so he won't be able to fuel them into twin spells or quicken spells to fire off a bunch of Eldritch Blasts because he won't have as many sorcery points. So, make sure he's keeping track of his sorcery points and so on and so forth, but it all should be balanced by the rules. I don't think anything about it is going to be broken from the quick little description that you gave. In terms of it melting your encounters or other people at the table having fun, I would just say this. Everybody has a different reason that they're at the table. Everyone has a different reason that they like D&D. Find out what those reasons are for your other players and make sure you give them an opportunity to lean into it as well. The reason that min-maxers often catch the eye of DMs is because their use case for the thing that they're there for is combat. And you're going to have combat in every style of D&D game for the most part. So they build a min-max character and then they go into combat, and that's their thing. That's why they're there. That's what they like doing. What is the reason that your other characters are there? Are they role players? Are they detectives? As you can see, I put it down here and spelled detectives wrong. Are they role players? Are they detectives? Are they puzzle solvers? Are they somebody who just wants to come and hang out with their friends for a few hours and have fun? Figure out what that reason is, and then make sure you give them a chance to lean into it at the table. I had a table where I had like 2 people who just wanted to get together with the guys and hang out and crack jokes. And D&D was their way to do that. And so I allowed for more time at the start of each game session where we just kind of shot the shit. Normally I would be like, guys, we only have 3 or 4 hours or whatever. We got to get right into it. But I knew that a portion of the table was there to just catch up, see how everybody's doing, drink a beer. And so you need to find out what that reason is for the people at your table, and just make sure that you lean into them getting to have that moment as much as the min-maxer gets to have that moment. So if there are people there as role players, make sure you build some role play encounters for them. Same thing with puzzles, or if you're trying to create a little mystery or something, let them sleuth it out. It's just important to make sure, on a real basic level, make sure everybody's having fun, and find out what drives that fun for people, and make sure that you're giving them a chance to lean into it as much as your Eldritch Blast machine gun is having fun during encounters. And if he melts some of your encounters, then fine. It's not a big deal. It really isn't. It very rarely should you need to have predestined how a encounter turns out for your storyline. So if he melts through a couple of guys, add an extra encounter and make sure you soup it up a little bit. And you should be able to do that on the fly. Even if you can't rebalance an encounter on the fly, just let him mop the floor with somebody, and then add an extra encounter in the game with more power to it. And then that way, it doesn't just ruin your session. Let's see what you said. After they gain some infamy, too, you can get the excuse that enemies will start actively trying to lightly encounter them by using anti-magic artifacts for this Eldritch Blast thing. Oh, to the last guy. So yeah, I mean, one thing I'd say to most DMs is don't neuter what it is that your group does, that your players do well. If he's good at Eldritch Blast, let him be good at Eldritch Blast. But like, so you could put in like an anti-magic field or something like that, but taking away somebody's best thing that they do, it's kind of like sniping, and it's not effective for making them have fun. What you can do is make what they do less effective by the type of fights that you put them in. So if I have a guy and he's getting off, and I don't know how he would do this, right? Like he said, it's an Eldritch Blast machine gun. So let's say he's getting off 3 Eldritch Blasts per turn. Well, that's great. But if I give you 20 goblins who are attacking you, well, you can knock out 3 of them, but you can only target 3 of them per turn. So now 17 are going to take swings at you next turn. And so I'm letting him do what he likes and is good at, but also I'm not making him the world beater that solves the problem of combat. And so, yes, you could definitely do what you are saying, Druids Union, but I would just suggest be careful taking away the joy of the character that the player built. The player wants to play what they're great at. And so if you have that much of a problem with somebody's build where you feel like you need to design counters specifically to make them ineffective, I think more what needs to happen is you have to have a conversation with the player and say, hey, I think you're a little OP. Here's what I think we can do about it. I don't want to ruin your character, but this would be the changes that I need to make because I need to outlaw some of the things that you're doing. It's too powerful at the table. So let's see your reaction to that. Good points on the anti-magic all around. Can't really disagree at all. I just like throwing one thing into fights when there is an OP character to force the party to work as a team. It is important to force the party to work as a team. The way that I do that, instead of nerfing one, is building up the other. And so what is the rest of your table good at? If somebody's really acrobatic and they're in a group with the Eldritch Blast machine gun, well, we've turned this fight into a chase scene and you've got to, jump from platform to platform and blah, blah, blah. And so the acrobatic player gets to shine where the, machine gun might not be as effective. So I love your idea to force them to work as a team. I would do that by increasing the effectiveness of the others rather than decreasing the effectiveness of the min-max gamer. But listen, sometimes it's unavoidable. Sometimes you just have to nerf somebody because they are just way too strong. But I do that more through like a conversation with them than the encounter itself. Okay. D&D Wednesday, we're continuing to roll through. As we've said all week, we are going to stream every day, but we stream different stuff every day. Sometimes it's video games. Sometimes we talk about sports. Sometimes it's just a free-for-all. But we will do D&D every Wednesday. So, if you Druids Union or Manu, if you guys only like D&D talk, I'd invite you to come back every Wednesday and we can kind of talk about it. I also will be posting these as VODs on my YouTube channel. So you can always just follow, subscribe there. And that way you can see the videos on demand when they come out.